The wind carried dust and whispers of scandal as Eliza Winters stumbled down the muddy main street of Clifton Hill, Missouri, clutching a letter that had shattered her last hope of respectability. The year was 1875, and at 22 years old, she found herself utterly alone in a world that showed little mercy to women without protection. Eliza had arrived in Clifton Hill 3 months earlier with dreams as bright as the new copper penny she'd kept for luck. The daughter of a once prosperous shopkeeper from St. Louis, she had been raised with modest comforts and expectations of a suitable marriage. But typhoid had swept through her neighborhood like wildfire, claiming both her parents within a week of each other. The family business, it turned out, had been mortgaged to cover her father's gambling debts, leaving her with nothing but her mother's silver hairbrush and a recommendation to work as a governess for her father's cousin in Clifton Hill. The letter in her hand, delivered that morning, informed her that the cousin had died unexpectedly, and the family had no position for her. Her meager funds had already dwindled to almost nothing, spent on lodging at the town's only boarding house while she'd waited for a response. Eliza stopped in front of the Golden Nugget Saloon, its gaudy sign swinging in the autumn breeze. She had passed by the establishment daily, averting her eyes from the painted ladies who sometimes lounged on the balcony, calling to men below. Now, desperation overrode propriety. She knew what went on upstairs in places like this. The boarding house matron had warned all the ladies to stay clear of such establishments if they valued their reputation. But reputation wouldn't feed her, and the only other option was begging. Drawing a deep breath, Eliza straightened her spine, tucked a strand of auburn hair back into her simple bun, and pushed through the batwing doors. The midday saloon was quieter than she'd expected. A few men hunched over tables playing cards, while others nursed drinks at the long bar that dominated one wall. A piano stood silent in the corner, awaiting the evening revelry. Smoke hung in layers beneath the oil lamps, and the smell of whiskey, unwashed bodies, and cheap perfume assaulted her senses. "Well now, ain't you a fresh face?" The woman who approached wore a red dress cut scandalously low, her face painted with rouge and powder. Despite the artifice, Eliza could see she was older than she first appeared, perhaps 40, with knowing eyes that had seen too much of the world's harshness. "You lost, honey." "No," Eliza said, clutching her reticule with white knuckles. "I'm looking for work." The woman's eyebrows rose, and she gave Eliza a slow, assessing look from head to toe. "What kind of work you thinking you're qualified for in a place like this? I can serve drinks, or clean. I'm not afraid of hard work." Eliza fought to keep her voice steady. A bark of laughter came from behind the bar. A corpulent man with a waxed mustache and a stained apron wiped his hands on a rag. "Mavis, quit wasting time with the church mouse. She ain't got what it takes." Mavis tilted her head. "Don't be so sure, Frank. Girls got desperate eyes." She turned back to Eliza. "Honey, serving drinks ain't gonna pay for more than a few beans and a corner to sleep in, not in a town like this." Eliza swallowed hard. "What would?" Mavis exchanged a look with Frank, who shrugged and returned to wiping glasses. "Come upstairs with me," Mavis said quietly. "Let's talk proper." Following Mavis up the narrow staircase, Eliza felt as though each step carried her farther from the respectable life she'd known. The upstairs hallway was dimly lit, with several doors leading to small rooms. From one came the unmistakable sounds of a man's grunts and a woman's exaggerated moans. Eliza's face burned, but she forced herself to continue following Mavis to a room at the end of the hall. Inside was a small parlor with faded velvet furniture. Mavis gestured for Eliza to sit while she poured 2 small glasses of amber liquid from a decanter. "First thing you should know," Mavis said, handing Eliza a glass, "is that I don't force nobody. Girls who work my stairs do it because they choose to, and they can leave whenever they want, provided they ain't in debt to Frank downstairs." "Your stairs?" Eliza asked, leaving the whiskey untouched. "I run the girls. Frank owns the saloon, but upstairs is my territory." Mavis settled into an armchair, studying Eliza. "What's your story? You don't look like most girls who come asking for this kind of work." Eliza briefly explained her circumstances, each word painful to utter. Mavis nodded sympathetically. "That's how it starts for most of us. One bad turn, then another." She sipped her whiskey. "How much money you got left? Enough for perhaps 2 more nights at the boarding house. And then what?" Eliza looked down at her hands. "I don't know." "Here's my offer," Mavis said. "You can have a room here. Start by helping downstairs, serving drinks, cleaning up. See if you take to it. If not—" She gestured vaguely upward. "The men who come through here pay good money for a fresh face, especially one that looks like it came from quality folks." The prospect made Eliza's stomach turn, but she found herself nodding. What choice did she have? "One more thing," Mavis added. "Whatever name your mama gave you, you might want to put it aside while you're here. Most girls pick something new. I'm Eliza. Eliza Winters." "Well, Eliza, you can keep that if you want. But here's some advice from someone who's seen it all. Decide now what you will and won't do for money. It's easier to hold that line at the beginning than to find it again once it's lost." That night, Eliza moved her few belongings into a small room at the back of the saloon's second floor. It was sparse but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a hook for her 2 dresses. Mavis had loaned her a serving outfit, a black skirt and white shirtwaist with a red sash, far more modest than what the other girls wore, but still more revealing than anything Eliza had ever owned. As she served drinks, enduring pinches and lewd comments, Eliza told herself this was temporary. She would save every penny and find a way out of Clifton Hill. But as days turned into weeks, the hope of escape grew dimmer. The pay was meager, and after paying Mavis for her room and board, there was little left to save. A month into her new life, Eliza was cornered by Frank after closing time. "You ain't pulling your weight," he growled, his whiskey breath hot on her face. "Mavis says you're still just serving drinks. Men are asking about you, willing to pay top dollar for a taste of that fine upbringing." Eliza stepped back, bumping into the bar. "I'm not ready for that." Frank's laugh was ugly. "Ready? Honey, this ain't about ready. It's about earning your keep. You got 1 week to start bringing in real money or you're out on your ear." That night, Eliza wept silently into her pillow. The following morning, she approached Mavis. "Frank says I have to go upstairs with customers," she whispered. Mavis sighed. "He's been pushing. Business has been slow with the mine laying off workers." She studied Eliza's face. "You sure you're ready for this life? Once you cross that line, it's mighty hard to go back." "I don't see that I have a choice," Eliza said, the words bitter in her mouth. "There's always a choice, honey. It just might not be one you like." Mavis patted her hand. "I'll help you get ready, teach you what to expect, how to protect yourself as much as you can." The next few days were a blur of horrifying education. Mavis explained the mechanics, the expectations, how to please a man quickly so he'd leave sooner, how to check for disease, how to use vinegar douches afterward, how to negotiate fees in advance. On the night Eliza was to begin her new role, she stood trembling behind the beaded curtain that separated the saloon from the staircase, watching the men drink and gamble. Which one would be her first? The balding drummer who'd been eyeing her all evening? The grizzled miner with dirt permanently embedded in his knuckles? The young cowhand barely older than she was, spending his pay on whiskey and women? Just as she stepped through the curtain, Resigned to her fate, the batwing doors swung open, admitting a gust of cool night air and a tall figure in a worn duster. The newcomer paused, surveying the room with the calm alertness of a man accustomed to assessing his surroundings. He was easily over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered but lean, with the muscular build of someone who worked outdoors. As he removed his hat, Eliza caught a glimpse of dark blonde hair and a face that, while weathered by sun and wind, was strikingly handsome in a rugged way. He couldn't have been more than 30. "Well, I'll be damned," Frank muttered from behind the bar. "Look what the wind blew in." The man approached the bar, moving with the confident grace of a mountain lion. "Evening, Frank. Still watering down the whiskey, I see." "Not for you, Grant." "Never for you." Frank reached beneath the bar and produced a bottle that looked different from the ones he served the regular patrons. "What brings you back to our fine establishment, Grant Paxton?" The name rippled through the saloon in whispers. Eliza had heard the name mentioned a rancher whose property lay a half-day's ride outside town, a man who kept to himself but was respected even by those who didn't like him. "Just passing through," Grant said, his voice deep and even. "Thought I'd see if this place had improved any since my last visit." "Same as ever," Frank replied, pouring a generous measure into a glass. "Though we got some new faces upstairs you might be interested in." Grant's eyes, a striking blue-green that reminded Eliza of the river in summer, flicked briefly toward the stairs where she stood frozen. For an instant, their gazes locked, and Eliza felt an unexpected jolt of something. Not just the fear and shame that had become her constant companions, but a spark of awareness that left her momentarily breathless. He looked away first, returning his attention to Frank. "Not tonight." Eliza exhaled, unsure whether she felt relief or disappointment. Relief, surely. The thought of submitting to any man, even one who didn't repulse her on sight, made her stomach clench. The evening progressed, and Eliza found herself continuously aware of Grant's presence as he sat at a corner table, nursing his whiskey and occasionally exchanging words with men who stopped by his table. Unlike most patrons, he didn't participate in the raucous laughter or bawdy jokes. He seemed to be waiting for something or someone. Near midnight, trouble arrived in the form of 3 trail hands, dusty and mean with liquor. They'd been eyeing the girls all evening, growing increasingly bold with their comments. When one grabbed Ruby, the youngest of Mavis's girls, and tried to drag her upstairs without paying, Frank reached for the shotgun he kept under the bar. Before he could bring it to bear, the man who'd grabbed Ruby found himself facing Grant Paxton, who had moved with surprising speed from his corner table. "The lady doesn't seem interested in your company," Grant said, his voice quiet but carrying an undercurrent of steel. The trail hand, a burly man with a week's growth of beard, sneered. "Mind your business, mister. I paid for a whore, and I aim to get what I paid for." "You haven't paid for anything yet," Grant replied, "and these women aren't property to be bought. They provide a service for a fee if they choose to." The man spat on the floor. "What are you, some kind of preacher? These are just whores." What happened next occurred so quickly Eliza could hardly follow it. Grant's fist connected with the man's jaw, sending him sprawling. When the man's 2 companions moved to intervene, they found themselves facing not only Grant, but also Frank with his shotgun and 2 regular patrons who apparently decided to side with the rancher. "Take your friend and get out," Grant said to the remaining trail hands. "Clifton Hill has enough trouble without the likes of you." After a tense moment, the men helped their dazed companion to his feet and retreated, muttering threats. Grant returned to his table as if nothing had happened, though Eliza noticed he positioned himself where he could see both the door and the stairs. Later, As she was clearing glasses, Grant caught her eye and gestured to the empty chair across from him. After a moment's hesitation, Eliza sat down, conscious of Mavis watching from the bar. "You're new here," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, about a month now." He studied her face. "You don't belong in a place like this." Eliza bristled despite herself. "You don't know anything about me, Mr. Paxton." A smile touched the corners of his mouth, transforming his stern features. "Fair enough. What's your name?" "Eliza. Eliza Winters." "Well, Miss Winters, I meant no offense. But I've been around enough to recognize when someone is out of their element." He took a sip of his whiskey. "How did you end up here?" Something about his direct gaze made lying seem pointless. Eliza found herself telling him an abbreviated version of her story: her parents' deaths, the cousin who died before she arrived, her dwindling options. Grant listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded as if her story confirmed something he'd suspected. "And tonight was to be your first night. Upstairs?" he asked, his tone neutral. Eliza's cheeks burned. "Yes." He was quiet for a long moment, then said, "I have a proposition for you, Miss Winters. Not the kind you're expecting," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "I'm looking for someone to keep house at my ranch. The pay is fair, the work honest, and you'd have your own cabin. It's not luxury, but it's respectable work." Eliza stared at him, searching for the catch. Men didn't offer women like her women working in saloons respectable positions without expecting something in return. "Why would you offer this to me?" "Because you don't belong here, and I need help at the ranch. My previous housekeeper left to care for her ailing mother in Kansas City." He leaned forward. "This isn't charity, Miss Winters. It's a job offer. You'd earn your keep cooking, cleaning, and helping with various household tasks. Nothing more would be expected of you." "How do I know I can trust you?" Eliza asked, hope warring with suspicion. Grant's expression remained steady. "You don't, but ask around town about me if you like. I've lived in these parts for 8 years. People know my character." Before Eliza could respond, Mavis appeared at their table. "Everything all right here?" "Mr. Paxton was just offering me employment at his ranch," Eliza said, watching Mavis's reaction carefully. Surprisingly, Mavis nodded. "Grant's good people. Runs the Broken Spur Ranch out past Sentinel Ridge. Got a reputation for fair dealing." She fixed Grant with a hard look. "You offering her honest work?" "Yes, madam," he replied without hesitation. "Housekeeper position. Her own cabin, fair wages, and my word that she'll be treated with respect." Mavis considered this, then turned to Eliza. "You could do worse, honey, a lot worse." She gestured around the saloon. "This life eats girls like you alive. If you've got a chance at something else, I'd take it." Eliza's mind raced. It could be a trap, of course, but something in Grant Paxton's steady gaze made her want to believe him. And Mavis, who had shown her more kindness than she'd had any right to expect, seemed to trust him. "When would I start?" Eliza asked, hardly believing the words coming from her mouth. "Tomorrow, if you're willing," Grant said. "I'm staying at the hotel tonight and heading back to the ranch in the morning. You'd be welcome to ride with me. I would need to gather my things and settle accounts with Mavis and Frank." "Already taken care of," Mavis said with a small smile. "Frank owes Grant here for saving his hide in a poker game last year. Consider your debt paid." Eliza looked between them, overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events. "Thank you, Mr. Paxton. I accept your offer." "Grant," he corrected her. "If we're to work together, you might as well use my given name." "Grant," she repeated, the name feeling foreign on her tongue. "I'll be ready in the morning." As Eliza climbed the stairs to her room that night for the last time, she realized she felt a curious mixture of relief and trepidation. She was escaping the fate she had dreaded, but she was also venturing into the unknown with a man she had just met. Still, anything seemed preferable to the life that had awaited her at the Golden Nugget. The following morning dawned clear and crisp, with the promise of autumn in the air. Eliza packed her meager belongings, said goodbye to Mavis and the other girls, and met Grant in front of the hotel. He was already mounted on a magnificent chestnut gelding, holding the reins of a smaller, dappled mare. "This is Daisy," Grant said as he helped Eliza mount. "She's gentle and sure-footed. She'll carry you safely." The ride to the Broken Spur Ranch took most of the day. As they traveled, Grant pointed out landmarks and told Eliza about the area. He had a quiet way of speaking that she found soothing, and a depth of knowledge about the land that spoke of his years living there. "How did you come to own a ranch?" Eliza asked as they paused to rest the horses near a stream. Grant looked out over the rolling hills. "I came west after the war fought for the Union. Didn't have much waiting for me back in Pennsylvania. Worked as a cowhand, saved my money, and eventually bought land when prices dropped during the Panic of '73. "You fought in the war?" Eliza studied him with new interest. He would have been very young, last 2 years of it, enlisted at 17. His expression turned distant. "Saw things no boy should see, came west looking for something different." He shook off the memory. "What about you? You mentioned your parents, any other family?" Eliza shook her head. "No siblings. My mother had several miscarriages before me. My father was an only child, and my mother's family disowned her when she married him. They thought she was marrying beneath her station. And now here you are, riding to a strange ranch with a man you just met," Grant observed. "You're either very brave or very desperate." "Perhaps a bit of both," Eliza admitted with a small smile. They crested a hill in late afternoon, and Grant reined in his horse. "There it is, Broken Spur." Below them stretched a valley, verdant despite the approaching autumn. A creek wound through it like a silver ribbon, and nestled against the base of the far hill was a collection of buildings, a large main house built of logs and stone, a barn, several outbuildings, and, set slightly apart, a small cabin. "It's beautiful," Eliza breathed. "It's home," Grant said simply. As they rode into the yard, several men emerged from the barn, ranch hands returning from their day's work. They greeted Grant with obvious respect and eyed Eliza curiously. "Boys, this is Miss Eliza Winters," Grant announced. "She's our new housekeeper. I expect you to treat her with the same respect you'd show your own mothers and sisters." The men nodded, a few touching their hats in greeting. Eliza noted their reactions ranged from friendly to wary, but none seemed overtly hostile to her presence. Grant showed her to the cabin that would be her home. It was small but well built, with a main room containing a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, and a curtained-off sleeping alcove. Simple furniture, a table with 2 chairs, a rocking chair by the fireplace, a bed and dresser behind the curtain gave it a homey feel. "It's not fancy," Grant said, setting her bag inside the door, "but it's private. The pump out back has good water, and the outhouse is just beyond. When winter comes, we can move you to a room in the main house if this gets too cold." "It's perfect," Eliza said, meaning it. After the cramped, noisy quarters at the saloon, this peaceful cabin seemed like a palace. "I'll leave you to get settled," Grant said. "Come up to the main house when you're ready, and Mrs. Abernathy will show you around the kitchen. She's been cooking since Henrietta left, but she's got arthritis, something fierce, and it pains her to do it." Alone in her new home, Eliza sank onto the bed, her emotions finally overwhelming her. 24 hours ago, she had been preparing to sell her body to survive. Now she was here, in this clean, quiet place, with honest work and a chance to rebuild her life. She allowed herself to weep from relief, from the strain of the past months and from the sheer unexpectedness of her deliverance. After washing her face and changing into her cleanest dress, Eliza made her way to the main house. "The ranch's cook, Mrs. Abernathy," a round, gray-haired woman with gnarled hands and sharp eyes, showed her the kitchen, pantry, and dining room where the hands ate their meals. "Boss eats with the men most days," Mrs. Abernathy explained. "Says it keeps him in touch with what's happening on the ranch. But he's got a private dining room for when he has visitors or wants solitude." She fixed Eliza with a penetrating stare. "Grant Paxton's a good man. Best I've worked for. Treats his people fair and doesn't abide foolishness. You mind your business and do your work, you'll do fine here." "I intend to," Eliza assured her. "I'm grateful for the opportunity." Mrs. Abernathy nodded, apparently satisfied. "I'll help you for the first few days, show you how things run. The men like their meals hearty and on time. Breakfast at dawn, dinner at noon, supper at dusk. Between meals, there's cleaning, laundry, mending, and whatever else needs doing. Think you can handle it?" "Yes, madam," Eliza said firmly. After the constant fear and humiliation of the saloon, honest work, no matter how demanding, seemed like a blessing. That evening, Eliza served her first meal to the ranch hands, a stew Mrs. Abernathy had started earlier, cornbread baked in the huge cast-iron oven, and apple cobbler for dessert. The men were polite but reserved, clearly curious about her but respecting Grant's implicit instruction not to pry. Grant himself ate quietly, occasionally joining in the conversation but mostly observing. Once, Eliza caught him watching her with an unreadable expression that made her cheeks warm. After the meal, when the men had filed out and she was clearing the table, Grant approached her. "How are you settling in?" he asked. "Well, I think. Mrs. Abernathy has been very helpful. She's a good woman. Been with the ranch since I bought it." He hesitated, then added, "I want you to know that no one here knows where you came from. Your past is your own business." Eliza looked up in surprise. "You haven't told them," Grant shook his head. "It's not my story to tell. As far as anyone here knows, you're a respectable woman who needed work. That's all they need to know." Gratitude washed over her. "Thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness." "Do your job well. That's all the repayment I need." He turned to go, then paused. "One more thing. There's a trunk in the storage room with some of Henrietta's things, clothes and such. She left in a hurry and said anything she didn't take could be given to whoever replaced her. You're welcome to look through it, see if anything might be useful to you." In the days that followed, Eliza threw herself into her new role with determination. The work was hard, cooking for 12 hungry men, cleaning the sprawling main house, doing laundry and various other tasks, but it was honest. And at the end of each day, she returned to her private cabin with a sense of accomplishment rather than shame. The trunk Grant had mentioned yielded several serviceable dresses, aprons, and a warm shawl that would be useful as winter approached. Henrietta had been a larger woman, but Eliza had always been handy with a needle and was able to alter the clothes to fit. Gradually, the ranch hands warmed to her. There was Luke, the foreman, a taciturn man in his 40s with a scar that bisected one eyebrow, young Jamie, barely 18 and eager to please, Miguel, who taught her Spanish phrases as she worked, and half a dozen others, each with their own story and personality. And then there was Grant. He remained something of an enigma to Eliza. He was unfailingly polite, even kind in his quiet way, but also reserved. He spent long days working alongside his men, returning tired and sometimes mud-splattered, but never complained. Occasionally, she would find him in the library late at night, reading by lamplight history books, poetry, even novels. One evening, about 3 weeks after her arrival, Eliza was returning to her cabin after finishing the dinner dishes when she heard the soft strains of a violin. Following the sound, she found Grant sitting on the porch of the main house, drawing the bow across the strings with surprising skill. He stopped when he saw her. "I didn't realize I had an audience." "Please don't stop on my account," Eliza said. "It's beautiful. I didn't know you played." Grant gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Something I learned as a boy. My mother insisted." He resumed playing, a melancholy tune that seemed to capture the vastness of the land around them. Eliza sat, captivated by both the music and the unexpected glimpse of another side of this man. When he finished, she asked, "Where did you learn to play like that?" "Philadelphia. My father was a lawyer, wanted me to follow in his footsteps. Music lessons were part of what he considered a proper education." Grant set the violin in its case. "Then the war came, and afterward everything was different. Do you ever regret it, coming west instead of becoming a lawyer?" Grant considered the question. "No, this life suits me better. Out here, a man is judged by what he does, not who his family is or where he went to school." He glanced at her. "What about you? Any regrets?" Eliza thought about her parents, the life that had been taken from her so suddenly. "I regret not telling my father to stop gambling," she said finally. "I knew he was losing money, but I never said anything. Maybe if I had." "We all carry those maybes," Grant said quietly. "The trick is not letting them weigh us down so much we can't move forward." In that moment, something shifted between them, a recognition of shared experience despite their different paths. They talked late into the night, about books they had read, places they had seen, dreams they had harbored. When Eliza finally rose to return to her cabin, she felt as though she had glimpsed the man behind the rancher's stoic exterior. As autumn deepened toward winter, life at the broken spur fell into a comfortable rhythm. Eliza's cooking improved under Mrs. Abernathy's tutelage, and she took pride in the appreciative comments from the hands. The main house, which had shown signs of bachelor neglect when she arrived, now gleamed with polish and care. She also found unexpected pleasure in the natural beauty of the ranch, the way morning mist hung in the valley, the vibrant colors of the turning leaves, the spectacular sunsets that painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. On Sundays, when work was lighter, she sometimes walked along the creek, gathering late wildflowers or simply enjoying the solitude. It was on one such Sunday in late October that she encountered Grant, returning from a ride. He dismounted when he saw her, leading his horse along the creek bank. "Enjoying your day off?" he asked. "Very much. It's so beautiful here, different from St. Louis but beautiful in its own way." Grant nodded. "Most people only see the harshness at first, the isolation, the unforgiving nature of the land. But there's beauty here if you know how to look for it." They walked in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the rustle of fallen leaves under their feet and the gentle murmur of the creek. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," Eliza said finally. "That night at the saloon, when you offered me this position, why did you really do it?" Grant was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. "I recognized something in you," he said at last. "A dignity that hadn't been beaten down yet. I've seen what happens to women who are forced into that life, how it changes them, hardens them." He looked at her directly. "I couldn't stand by and watch that happen to you." "So it was pity," Eliza said, unsure why the thought bothered her. "No," Grant replied firmly. "Respect. For your courage in the face of impossible circumstances, and perhaps a bit of selfishness too. I needed a housekeeper and you seemed capable." Eliza smiled at his pragmatic addition. "Well, whatever your reasons, I'm grateful, more than I can say." As they turned back toward the ranch buildings, Grant said, "There's a harvest dance in town next Saturday." The hands are looking forward to a chance to socialize, maybe court some of the local girls. He hesitated. I usually make an appearance, show support for the community. Would you like to accompany me? Eliza's heart skipped. Was he asking her to the dance as his employee, or was there something more to the invitation? I would enjoy that, she said carefully. But won't people talk? The ranch owner escorting his housekeeper. People always talk, Grant said with a shrug. But you've been here almost 2 months now. You're part of the ranch. It's natural you'd attend community events. The night of the harvest dance arrived clear and cool. Eliza wore her best dress, a deep blue wool that Henrietta had left behind, altered to fit her smaller frame. She had even splurged on a bit of ribbon for her hair, using some of the wages Grant had been faithfully paying her. Grant arrived at her cabin promptly at 6, dressed in clothes Eliza had never seen: a clean black suit, white shirt, and string tie. His usually tousled hair was neatly combed, and he had trimmed his beard. He looked so handsome it momentarily took her breath away. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes warming as they took in her appearance. "Thank you. You clean up rather well yourself." They rode to town in Grant's wagon, along with several of the hands who were too excited about the prospect of female company to mind chaperoning their boss and housekeeper. The town hall was decorated with autumn leaves and pumpkins, and a small band played lively tunes in the corner. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a golden glow over the proceedings. As they entered, Eliza felt a moment of trepidation. Would anyone recognize her from the saloon? But the townspeople who greeted Grant seemed to accept her presence without question, and soon she found herself being introduced to neighbors, merchants, and the wives of local ranchers. "So you're the new housekeeper at Broken Spur," said Mrs. Henderson, the doctor's wife, a plump woman with kind eyes. "We've heard good things about you. Grant says your cooking has the hands fighting over seconds." Eliza blushed at the praise. "I'm still learning, but they're an appreciative audience." The evening progressed pleasantly. Grant danced with her several times, his hand warm and steady at her waist, his movements surprisingly graceful for such a tall man. Eliza also danced with some of the hands and several local men who seemed eager to meet the newcomer. During a break in the music, Eliza stepped outside for some air. The night was crisp, stars scattered like diamond dust across the velvet sky. She was admiring the view when a familiar voice made her blood run cold. "Well, if it ain't the high and mighty Miss Winters. Heard you found yourself a protector." Frank from the Golden Nugget stood in the shadows, a sneer on his fleshy face. Eliza hadn't seen him enter the dance, hadn't realized he would be in attendance. "Good evening, Frank," she said, striving for composure. "If you'll excuse me, I should get back inside." He stepped to block her path. "Not so fast. You think these fine folks would still tip their hats to you if they knew where you was working before Paxton took a shine to you?" "I worked for you for exactly 1 month serving drinks," Eliza said, her voice low but firm. "I never went upstairs with any man." Frank's laugh was ugly. "Semantics, honey. You was in a whorehouse, ready to spread your legs for cash. That makes you a whore in most people's books." "Is there a problem here?" Grant's voice cut through the night air like a knife. Frank's expression changed, caution replacing malice. "No problem, Paxton. Just catching up with an old employee." Grant's eyes, cold as winter, fixed on Frank. "Miss Winters works for me now. Any business you had with her is concluded." "Sure, sure," Frank said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Just thought people might be interested to know where you found your housekeeper." He emphasized the last word with obvious insinuation. Grant took a step forward, and though he made no threatening gesture, something in his stance made Frank back up. "Miss Winters is a respected member of my household. Anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me. Is that clear? Frank swallowed visibly. Crystal clear, Paxton. No offense meant. Good. Now I suggest you enjoy the dance elsewhere. Grant's tone made it clear this was not a suggestion. After Frank slunk away, Grant turned to Eliza, his expression softening. Are you all right? Yes, thank you. She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. You knew this might happen. That's why you hesitated to bring me. Grant sighed. I considered it a possibility. Frank's not well liked, but he does business with some of the ranchers and miners. He took her hands in his. Eliza, listen to me. Your past is just that past. You've earned the respect of everyone at Broken Spur through your hard work and character. Don't let a man like Frank make you doubt yourself. Eliza felt tears threatening but blinked them back. I don't want to cause trouble for you or the ranch. You're not trouble, Eliza, you're. He paused, seeming to search for words. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. Most would have broken under what you've endured, but you just keep going, keep holding onto your dignity. His hands tightened on hers. That's rare. Special. Something in his tone made Eliza's heart race. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken words. Grant leaned closer, and for a breathless moment, Eliza thought he might kiss her. Instead, he gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. We should go back inside, he said softly. People will wonder where we've gone. The remainder of the evening passed without incident, though Eliza was acutely aware of curious glances and whispered conversations. Whether from Frank's gossip or simply the natural interest in Grant Paxton's companion, she couldn't tell. On the ride home, Grant was quieter than usual, lost in thought. The hands, tired from dancing and perhaps a bit too much punch, dozed in the back of the wagon. When they reached the ranch, Grant helped Eliza down from the wagon seat, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. Thank you for escorting me tonight, Eliza said. Despite that unpleasant encounter, I enjoyed myself, as did I. Grant hesitated. Eliza, about what Frank said, I want you to know that if anyone in town gives you trouble, you can come to me. You're not alone anymore. I know, she said softly, and that means more than I can say. As November turned to December, the ranch prepared for winter. Hay was stacked in the barn, firewood split and stacked by every door, preserves and smoked meats laid in for the months when travel to town would be difficult. Eliza threw herself into these preparations, canning the last of the garden's produce, helping to smoke meat, and ensuring the main house was ready for the cold months ahead. One morning, she woke to find the world transformed. Snow had fallen overnight, covering the ranch in a pristine blanket of white. The sight took her breath away, the stark beauty of dark trees against the snow, the way the rising sun cast a rosy glow over the landscape. She was standing on her cabin porch, wrapped in her shawl and admiring the view, when Grant approached, leading a horse pulling a sleigh. First snow, he said, his breath fogging in the crisp air. Thought you might enjoy a ride before the hands tramp it all down. The gesture was so unexpected and thoughtful that Eliza felt a rush of warmth despite the cold. I would love that. Grant helped her into the sleigh, tucking a heavy buffalo robe around her before climbing in himself. With a click of his tongue, they set off, the runners hissing softly through the fresh snow. It's magical, Eliza said as they glided through the transformed landscape, like something from a fairy tale. Grant smiled, the expression lighting his usually serious face. Winter has its own beauty out here, harsh sometimes but clean, honest. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, following the creek that wound through the property. Ice had formed along its edges, but the center still flowed, dark against the white banks. Christmas is coming, Grant observed. The hands usually have a small celebration. Nothing fancy, a special dinner, maybe a few gifts. Some go to town for the church service if the weather allows. That sounds lovely. I could prepare a proper Christmas dinner, Eliza offered. And perhaps decorate the main house a bit. The men would appreciate that. Grant slowed the horse as they approached a stand of pines, their branches heavy with snow. Eliza, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you. His tone made her heart quicken. Yes. You've been at the ranch for over 3 months now. Your work has been exemplary. More than that, you've brought life back to the place. The house feels like a home again. I'm glad, Eliza said, touched by his words. Broken Spur has become home to me as well. Grant turned to face her, his expression serious. That's what I wanted to discuss. I know you came here under difficult circumstances, and I've tried to give you space, time to find your footing. But I find myself. He paused, seeming to search for words. I find myself thinking of you as more than just my housekeeper. Eliza's breath caught. Oh, I care for you, Eliza, more than I expected to, more than might be proper, given our positions. His eyes, sincere and slightly vulnerable, held hers. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. If you don't share these feelings, nothing needs to change. You'll always have a place at Broken Spur. And if I do share them, Eliza asked softly, Grant's expression warmed, then perhaps we could explore what might grow between us. At your pace, with no expectations beyond what you're comfortable with. Eliza considered his words. Over the months, her feelings for Grant had evolved from gratitude to respect to something deeper, something that made her heart race when he entered a room. But she had been afraid to acknowledge it, afraid of misinterpreting his kindness, afraid of risking the security she had found. I care for you too, she admitted. But I worry about what others might think. That I'm trying to improve my position, or that you feel obligated because you rescued me. I've never thought of it as a rescue, Grant said. You would have found your way with or without my intervention. You're too strong to have remained in that situation for long. He took her gloved hand in his. As for what others think, I've never much cared for gossip. The people who matter know your character. The sincerity in his eyes gave Eliza courage. Then yes, I would like to explore what might grow between us. Grant's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, almost reverent, but it kindled a warmth that spread through Eliza's entire body. When they parted, Eliza felt as though something fundamental had shifted. No longer was she merely a woman who had narrowly escaped a degrading fate. She was a woman being courted by a man who saw her strength, who valued her for herself. The weeks leading up to Christmas were filled with a new sweetness. Grant was careful to maintain propriety. Their relationship was conducted mostly through conversations by the fire after the hands had retired, occasional walks when weather permitted, and moments stolen between the demands of running the ranch. But each interaction was infused with growing affection and deepening trust. Eliza threw herself into preparations for Christmas, determined to make it special. She baked cookies and pies, strung popcorn and cranberries for garlands, and with the help of Jamie and Miguel, brought in evergreen boughs to decorate the main house. On Christmas Eve, after a festive dinner where the hands presented Eliza with a handmade wooden box for her sewing things, carved it myself, Luke announced gruffly. Grant asked her to remain behind when the others retired to the bunkhouse. They sat before the fire in the main parlor, the room festive with decorations and fragrant with pine. Outside, snow fell softly, adding to the sense of peaceful seclusion. I have something for you, Grant said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew a small package wrapped in tissue paper. Eliza unwrapped it carefully to find a delicate silver locket on a chain. "Grant, it's beautiful. Open it," he urged. Inside was a tiny portrait of her parents, a miniature copy of the daguerreotype she kept among her few possessions. "How did you?" I asked Mrs. Abernathy to borrow it when you were in town last month. Had a photographer in Kansas City make the copy. Grant looked uncertain. "I thought you might like having them close to your heart." Tears filled Eliza's eyes. It was perhaps the most thoughtful gift she had ever received. "Thank you," she whispered, unable to say more. Grant fastened the chain around her neck, his fingers warm against her skin. "There's something else I want to give you," he said, "but I'm not sure if it's too soon." Eliza looked up at him, curious. "I love you, Eliza," he said simply. "I think I began falling in love with you that first night in the saloon, when you looked at me with such dignity despite your circumstances. Everything since has only deepened those feelings." Joy blossomed in Eliza's chest, so intense it was almost painful. "I love you too," she said, the words feeling both momentous and completely natural. "I think I have for some time." Grant took her hands in his. "I don't want to rush you. What you've been through, the changes in your life this past year, it's a lot to process. But I want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I would be honored to make a more permanent place for you in my life. Not as my housekeeper, but as my wife." Eliza's breath caught. "Are you proposing?" "Not yet," Grant said with a small smile. "When I propose properly, you'll know it. This is letting you know where my heart stands so you can consider if that's a path you might want to explore." Eliza found herself deeply touched by his consideration, the way he was giving her space to make her own decisions, to be sure of her own heart. "Thank you for understanding that I might need time," she said. "But my heart is already quite certain of its direction." Grant's smile widened, and he drew her into his arms, kissing her with more passion than before, but still with an underlying gentleness that made Eliza feel cherished. Winter settled over Broken Spur, bringing short days and long nights. The ranch operated at a slower pace, with the hands focusing on maintaining equipment, caring for the livestock in the barns, and handling only essential outdoor tasks when the weather allowed. This quieter season gave Grant and Eliza more time together. They read aloud by the fire in the evenings, played chess Grant was teaching her, and she proved a quick study, and talked for hours about their pasts, their hopes, their dreams for the future. Eliza learned more about Grant's experiences in the war, reluctantly shared but important to understanding the man he had become. In turn, she told him about her childhood in St. Louis, her father's gradual descent into gambling, and her mother's quiet despair as their fortunes dwindled. "I used to be angry with him," Eliza admitted one evening as they sat before the fire, "for risking everything, for leaving us vulnerable. But now I mostly feel sad. He was a good man in many ways, just flawed." "We're all flawed," Grant said, his fingers gently stroking hers. "The trick is finding someone who loves us despite those flaws, maybe even because of them, since they make us who we are." February brought a vicious blizzard that isolated the ranch for nearly a week. The hands stayed close to the bunkhouse, venturing out only to tend to the animals. Grant and Luke took turns checking the outlying pastures where some cattle still grazed, returning with frost in their beards and exhaustion in their eyes. On the third day of the storm, Grant didn't return from his afternoon check of the north pasture. As dusk approached and the wind howled with increasing fury, Eliza stood at the window, anxiety knotting her stomach. Luke and three of the hands prepared to search, donning their heaviest coats and wrapping scarves around their faces. "He probably took shelter in the line cabin," Luke reassured Eliza. "Smart thing to do in this weather, but we'll find him, don't you worry." They had just mounted their horses when a dark shape emerged from the swirling snow. Grant, leading his horse, staggered into the yard. Eliza ran out, heedless of the biting cold as Luke and the others helped him dismount. "Found a stray calf," Grant explained through chattering teeth as they guided him into the house. "Had to bring it in. Got disoriented in the whiteout, while Mrs. Abernathy prepared hot broth. Eliza helped Grant out of his frozen clothes and into dry ones, then settled him before the fire with blankets piled around him. His hands and face were chapped from the cold, and his left foot showed early signs of frostbite. "You could have died out there," Eliza said, her voice breaking as she bathed his reddened hands in lukewarm water, gradually increasing the temperature as circulation returned. "Couldn't leave the calf," Grant said, wincing as feeling returned to his extremities. "Would have meant leaving it to die." "And what about the people who need you here?" Eliza asked, tears threatening. "What about me? Did you think about what would happen to me if you didn't come back?" Grant's eyes, glazed with exhaustion and pain, focused on her face. "Eliza," he said softly, "you would be fine. You're strong enough to make your way no matter what happens. That's one of the reasons I love you." "That doesn't mean I want to face the world without you," she replied, her tears finally spilling over. "I've lost too many people already." Grant reached out, cupping her cheek with his still cold hand. "I'm sorry. I didn't think about how it would affect you. I should have." Something shifted in Eliza at that moment, a realization that love meant vulnerability, that opening her heart to Grant meant accepting the possibility of loss. But it also meant having someone who would fight through a blizzard to return to her. "Just promise me you'll be more careful," she said. "I'm not ready to lose you." "I promise," Grant replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "I have too much to live for now." That night, after Grant had been settled in his room with strict instructions to rest, Eliza sat by his bedside, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest as he slept. The thought of how close she had come to losing him made her heart ache. But it also crystallized something in her mind. She didn't want to waste any more time being cautious with their future. When Grant awoke the next morning, his condition much improved. Eliza was still there, dozing in a chair beside his bed. He reached out to touch her hand, and she startled awake. "You stayed all night," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Of course I did." Eliza straightened, wincing at the stiffness in her neck from the awkward position. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Sore, but better." Grant studied her face. "You look exhausted. You should get some rest." "I will." Eliza hesitated, then spoke the words that had formed in her heart during the long night's vigil. "But first, I wanted to tell you something. Yesterday, when I thought I might lose you, it made me realize I don't want to wait any longer. If your offer still stands, I'm ready for that proposal you mentioned at Christmas." Grant's eyes widened, then crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "Are you proposing to me, Miss Winters?" Eliza laughed, relieved by his teasing tone. "Certainly not. I'm merely indicating that if you were to ask a certain question, my answer would be favorable." Grant pushed himself up to a sitting position, wincing slightly. "I had planned something more romantic, a proper proposal with a ring and perhaps a moonlit ride." "I don't need romance," Eliza said softly. "I just need you, safe, here with me." Grant took her hand, his expression growing serious. "Eliza Winters, you are the strongest, most remarkable woman I've ever known. You've brought light and warmth back into my life, and I can't imagine a future without you in it. Would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," Eliza said, her heart so full she could barely speak. "Yes, I will marry you." Grant pulled her toward him, sealing their engagement with a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. Spring came early that year, as if eager to celebrate with them. By March, the snow was melting, revealing patches of mud and the first tentative green shoots. The cattle were let out to graze on the lower pastures, and preparations began for the spring calving season. Eliza moved from her cabin to a room in the main house, maintaining propriety until the wedding but allowing for more time together. The hands accepted the engagement with varying degrees of enthusiasm, from Luke's gruff "About time" to Jamie's beaming "Congratulations." News spread quickly through the county. Most reactions were positive, though Eliza was aware of occasional whispers about her past. But Grant's standing in the community, and Eliza's own growing reputation as a kind and capable woman, silenced most of the gossip. They planned a June wedding, to be held at the small church in Clifton Hill. Mrs. Henderson, the doctor's wife who had been so kind to Eliza at the harvest dance, helped with preparations, offering advice and introducing Eliza to other ranchers' wives who might have been standoffish without her endorsement. "Every town has its gossips," Mrs. Henderson said matter-of-factly when Eliza thanked her for her support. "But those of us with any sense judge people by their actions, not rumors, and anyone can see how happy you make Grant. That man deserves some joy after all he's been through." One Sunday in late April, Grant suggested they ride to a part of the ranch Eliza had never visited, a high meadow beyond the north pasture. The day was perfect for riding, warm sunshine tempered by a cool breeze, the landscape awakening with the vibrant green of new growth. As they crested a hill, Eliza gasped at the view that spread before them. The meadow was carpeted with wildflowers, blue lupine, orange paintbrush, yellow buttercups creating a natural tapestry against the green grass. Beyond, the land fell away to reveal a vista of rolling hills stretching to the horizon. "It's magnificent," Eliza breathed. Grant helped her dismount, then led her to a flat rock overlooking the panorama. "This is my favorite spot on the ranch. I come here when I need to think, or just to remind myself why I chose this life." They sat side by side, enjoying the view and the sense of solitude. After a while, Grant reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. "I know we're already engaged," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice, "but I wanted to do this properly." He opened the pouch and tipped a ring into his palm, a delicate gold band set with a small diamond that caught the sunlight and scattered it in rainbow fragments. "It was my mother's," Grant explained as he slipped it onto Eliza's finger. "She gave it to me before she died, said to save it for when I found someone special." "It's beautiful," Eliza said, tears pricking her eyes. "Thank you for sharing this piece of your family with me." "You are my family now," Grant said simply. "You and whatever future we build together." As they sat there, hands entwined and hearts full, Eliza reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the desperation of that day in Clifton Hill when she had entered the Golden Nugget, to this hillside where she sat as the future Mrs. Grant Paxton, it seemed almost impossible to believe. "What are you thinking?" Grant asked, noting her thoughtful expression. "I was thinking about fate," Eliza replied. "If my cousin hadn't died before I arrived, if you hadn't come to the saloon that particular night, so many things had to align for us to be here now." "I don't know if I believe in fate," Grant said. "But I do believe that sometimes, even in the darkest moments, life can surprise you with unexpected blessings." Eliza leaned her head against his shoulder, content in a way she had never imagined possible. "Yes," she agreed softly, "the most unexpected blessings of all." The wedding day dawned clear and bright, as if nature itself approved of the union. The small church in Clifton Hill was decorated with wildflowers from the meadow Grant had shown Eliza, their vibrant colors brightening the simple wooden pews and altar. Eliza wore a dress of ivory satin, a gift from Mrs. Henderson and several other ranchers' wives who had taken Eliza under their collective wing. Her auburn hair was arranged in an elegant knot, adorned with small white flowers, and she carried a bouquet of meadow blooms tied with a blue ribbon. As she walked down the aisle toward Grant, who stood tall and handsome in a new black suit, Eliza felt a profound sense of rightness. This man, this place, this life, it was where she belonged. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Grant kissed her with a tenderness that belied the strength in his hands, Eliza felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard under the spreading cottonwoods. Neighbors and friends from miles around came to share in the festivities, bringing gifts and well wishes. There was music and dancing, abundant food, and enough goodwill to overcome any lingering reservations about the new Mrs. Paxton's background. As evening fell and lanterns were lit, casting a golden glow over the gathering, Grant led Eliza away from the celebration to a moment of privacy by the creek. "Happy, Mrs. Paxton?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," Eliza replied, leaning into his embrace. "It feels like a dream." "Not a dream," Grant said, kissing her temple. "Just a new chapter in our story." Later that night, when the guests had departed and they were alone in the main house, their home, Eliza discovered new depths to the love she felt for Grant. His touches were gentle yet passionate, his patience infinite as they explored this new dimension of their relationship. In his arms, Eliza found not just physical pleasure but a profound sense of belonging, of finally being exactly where she was meant to be. The years that followed brought both joy and challenges to the Paxtons. Their first child, a son they named William after Eliza's father, arrived 11 months after their wedding, a sturdy, healthy boy with Grant's blue-green eyes and Eliza's auburn hair. 2 years later came a daughter, Margaret, named for Grant's mother, followed by another son, James, in their 5th year of marriage. The ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Grant's knowledge of the land and livestock, combined with Eliza's keen mind for finances and organization, proved a formidable combination. They weathered droughts, harsh winters, and fluctuations in cattle prices with resilience, gradually expanding their holdings and improving the original buildings. Eliza never forgot where she had come from, or how close she had come to a very different life. When a young woman arrived in Clifton Hill in circumstances similar to her own, Eliza arranged for her to be hired as a teacher at the new schoolhouse that had been built largely due to Eliza's fundraising efforts. "You gave her a chance," Grant observed after the young woman had proven herself an excellent teacher, "just like someone once gave you. Everyone deserves at least one person who believes in them," Eliza replied. "I was fortunate enough to find that in you." As their children grew, Eliza and Grant shared with them the value of hard work, the importance of treating all people with dignity, and the understanding that life's path is rarely straight or predictable. "Your mother," Grant told young William one evening as they sat on the porch watching a spectacular sunset, "is the bravest person I know. She faced challenges that would have broken many, and she did it with her head held high. Is that why you fell in love with her?" The boy asked with the directness of youth. Grant smiled, catching Eliza's eye over their son's head. "That's part of it. But mostly I love her because she has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever met. She makes everyone around her better just by being who she is." Eliza felt tears sting her eyes at the simple truth in his words. After all these years, Grant's love still had the power to overwhelm her with its steadfastness. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Grant surprised Eliza with a journey back to the meadow where he had given her his mother's ring. They rode out at dawn, just the two of them, leaving the children in Mrs. Abernathy's capable care. The meadow was as beautiful as Eliza remembered, though the wildflowers were different in this season. They spread a blanket on the same flat rock where they had sat a decade earlier, and Grant produced a picnic breakfast from his saddlebags. 10 years, Eliza marveled as they ate. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I walked into the Golden Nugget, terrified and desperate. And sometimes it feels like you've always been part of my life, Grant replied, as if everything before was just preparation for finding you. They spent the day reminiscing about their years together, the challenges they had overcome, the joy their children brought them, the community they had helped to build. As the sun began its descent toward the western hills, Grant reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box. "I have something for you," he said, pressing it into Eliza's hand. "A small token of these 10 years. Inside the box lay a gold locket, larger and more ornate than the silver one he had given her that first Christmas. When Eliza opened it, she found a tiny portrait of their family, Grant, herself, and their 3 children painted with exquisite detail. "It's perfect," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. "Absolutely perfect." Grant fastened the chain around her neck, letting the locket rest beside the silver one that still contained her parents' image. "Past and present," he said softly. "All the people who have shaped your heart." Eliza touched both lockets, feeling the weight of love both lost and found against her skin. "I never imagined that day in Clifton Hill, that life could hold so much happiness." "Nor did I before you," Grant admitted. "I was existing, not living. You changed everything." As they rode home in the golden light of late afternoon, Eliza reflected on the journey that had brought her here from the edge of despair to this profound contentment. She thought of the frightened young woman who had climbed those saloon stairs, preparing to sacrifice her dignity for survival, and the man who had offered her an alternative, not as a savior, but as someone who recognized her worth when she had almost forgotten it herself. "What are you thinking about?" Grant asked, noting her contemplative expression. Eliza smiled, the setting sun warm on her face. "I'm thinking that sometimes the hardest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations." Grant reached across the space between their horses to take her hand. "And I'm thinking that I'm the luckiest man alive to be traveling this road with you." Together they rode toward home, toward their children, toward the future. They continued to build a future founded on mutual respect, hard-won dignity, and a love that had transformed them both.